and you will find rest for your souls. Yes, my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. The Gospel of the Lord. I was doing a bit of research around this Gospel, and in terms of the yoke, obviously it's a wooden sort of article, and Jesus was a carpenter, and there is a legend to say that Jesus made the best yokes in all of Israel and all the rest of it. And this, my yoke is easy and my burden is light, was said to be a sort of an advertisement that carpenters would have had outside their shops, because obviously if a yoke didn't fit the beasts that it was made for, it would make life very difficult. Anyway, that's where we were coming from, and there was a prospect of maybe a half-interesting sermon there. But then there was something other, that I needed to speak to you about today, which is the questionnaire that we're making available to you, just so that we can get some idea of what your feelings are about this proposed change in Mass times, Sunday Mass times that we've been speaking about in our parish pastoral conversations this past while. And the proposal is, as you're probably aware, that before long there's only going to be one Saturday evening vigil Mass in the parish and one Sunday morning Mass. Now, one of the questions that came up in the pastoral conversation that we had on Wednesday evening in the community centre in Doneloop was, can things not just stay the same as they are now? And just by way of sort of, answering that question, just to sort of point out, well, you're very well aware of it at the moment. At the moment, there's only one priest in the parish who is fully active, and that's myself. And for some time now, I've been handling all the Sunday Masses, which means that I'm saying the 2 vigil Masses and 2 Sunday morning Masses. And then, of course, you get the extras that come in as well. And there was the infamous weekend round First Communion in Doneloop. We're at 7 Masses over that entire weekend. Now, if you go by the rule book, even 2 vigil Masses and 2 Sunday Masses are too much. I'd been saying at the meeting that a priest was limited to saying 2 Mass a day. I think I obviously need to go back and do my canon law over again. Well, I Googled just that particular principle in law, and actually found out that it is recommended that a priest should say only 1 Mass a day, for the sake of fatigue and, the danger of a lack of reverence creeping in and all the rest of it. Although, having said that, a priest is allowed to say more than 1 Mass in the day, and there's 2 conditions for that. First of all, when there is a shortage of priests, and secondly, when there's a good reason for it. Now, if there's a funeral, that's a good reason. If there's a wedding, that's a good reason. If something like First Holy Communion, stuff like that, they're all good reasons. You could probably also argue, I think, that a large number of people coming to all of our Masses every weekend would constitute a good reason too. Certainly if this place was bunged and every Mass we said was bunged, I don't know if we'd be having this conversation. I might just try to soldier on. But, I'm thinking, say, do you remember the blessing of the graves, the Masses we had before them, both in Doneloop and in Castlefinn, when the places were absolutely bunged? There wasn't a seat that wasn't taken as far as I could see. But we all know that we just have not been getting crowds like that at our Sunday Masses ever in my time, and I'm sure it's a good while in your memories whenever this church or Doneloop has been filled the way we would like them to be filled. And the upshot of that is that the numbers that we do get could very easily be combined and fit comfortably into either of our 2 parish churches. There is for myself one added factor, and it is important not just for me but for the diocese, and that's my place in the rota for the Mass for the Irish language community in Derry, because since COVID, Mass has been available only for that congregation only on a fortnightly basis. And that in itself, not having a regular time for Mass, has had a big impact on their numbers. I remember going back after COVID and wondering where they'd gone, and somebody pointed out, well, they've gone because half the time they don't know when Mass is on, so either they don't go or they go elsewhere. And I think, like, certainly, if I were a wee bit freer in my schedule at the moment, I would do my best to fill in as many gaps in that rota as I could for that community. That, I think, could be considered pastorally as another good reason to say more than one Mass on a Sunday. Now, the proposals at hand, the stable sort of Mass timetable, losing some Masses versus a rotating Mass timetable where Masses aren't lost, well, they have advantages and disadvantages. The first one, a neat, stable, reduced timetable of Mass, well, that's clear. People could get used to that easily and all the rest of it. But as opposed to that, there's the loss of certain Masses which have been, an integral part of people's lives, some people's lives, since God knows when, since way, way back. Then on the other hand, this other sort of rotating sort of timetable, we have these Masses. Yes, they don't disappear altogether, but they appear and disappear on a monthly basis, and that brings with it, again, like just referring back to that fortnightly thing in Derry for the Irish Mass, as I've put it in this week's bulletin, that brings the danger, because some people might never be quite sure where Mass is on a particular Sunday. They'll opt to go elsewhere or perhaps not at all. There is another thing I wonder about a rotating Mass, and sort of, if it did disperse the congregation, that will have an impact on our parish collection. Now, that took a dip after COVID, but I mean, I've been very, very impressed by your constant generosity and very, very grateful for it. But to be honest, we can't afford to take another hit. That's my very sort of crude estimation without the benefit of the Finance Council at this stage, but that's just where it is too. So these are the issues that we have to wrestle with here, and it's important that we do. So that's why you're going to be offered this questionnaire after today's Mass, and we just give you the opportunity to say where you stand on these issues. So do think carefully about it, if you would, and just in anticipation, I just want to express gratitude on behalf of your parish in terms of helping, contributing to this process of discernment that we might reach, please God, the right decision. Now, there is, of course, the sort of thought in my mind, it runs through every now and again, how easy it would be if we had 100% agreement one way or the other about how to proceed. But I don't think there's any, when you look at that there, it's not really a negative thing. I think that, say, for example, the people who have expressed their anxiety about the possible loss of Sunday Masses is a very good and a valuable thing. I mean, let's face it, in the past, it was all about the priest. When I've heard even recently changes in Mass times, I've heard priests saying, I just told them, I don't want to just tell you, this is your parish. It's mine as well, priest and people working together, so I'm not about just telling you. So it's good to sort of hear everybody's opinion, because at the end of the day, everybody's valuable and their opinions are valuable too. But also I think it's good to hear opinions like that, because they focus our attention on something that is happening in the church at every level, certainly at this part of the world, and it has been for some time.